Chess is a game in which two players take turns moving pieces along the squares of the board. The goal of chess is to checkmate your opponent's king. Checkmate occurs when the king is under attack and has no squares to move to where it would not be captured on the next turn, but we will revisit this later in the video. For now, examine how the board is set up. There are 8 pawns for each side that are placed in front of 8 major pieces. You will notice that the rook, knight, and bishop are symmetrically placed on either side of the king and queen. The bottom right corner of the board that houses the rook should always be a light square. You should also remember that the light queen is always on the light square, while the dark queen is always on the dark square. You will note that the board is marked as a grid with numbers and letters. The lettered columns are known as files, while the numbered rows are called ranks. If I told you to look at my bishop, you may be confused as to which one, so I would clear this up by saying look at my bishop on c1. Rooks are the piece that resemble a castle and can move vertically or horizontally, multiple squares. Bishops are the pointy pieces and they can move diagonally multiple squares. The queen, shown with the pointy crown, combines the rook and the bishop. It can move diagonally, vertically, and horizontally multiple squares. The king, denoted by a cross at the top of the piece, may move in any direction, but may only move one square. The knight resembles a horse, and it can move 2 squares in one direction, and then, perpendicularly, it can move 1 square in one of the other directions. For example, it can move 2 squares up and 1 square over, or it can move 2 squares to the right and 1 square vertically. When the move of a piece is blocked by an enemy piece, the piece captures the other. The knight is unique in that it can jump over friendly or enemy pieces. For example, this knight can jump over the pawns and capture the rook on h8. You will see, however, that our rook on a1 cannot capture the rook on a8, but it must first capture the pawn that is on a6. In addition, our rook on h1 is blocked by the pawn on h4 and cannot even capture the pawn. The bishop, queen, and king behave in the same way, also being blocked by other pieces that are in the way of where the piece might want to move. Pawns, however, have unique movement. A pawn begins the game on the 2nd rank. If the pawn is still on the 2nd rank, or the 7th rank for black pawns, it may advance 2 spaces. All other times, if a piece is blocking the pawn, it may only advance 1 space. Note as well that advancing for black means moving toward the 1st rank. However, a pawn cannot capture a piece by moving forward. A pawn can only capture a piece that is diagonally 1 square in front of the pawn. Chess also contains several special moves. The first move is castling. To castle, 4 criteria must be met. There are no pieces between the king and the rook. The rook has never moved from its starting square. The king has never moved from its starting square. And the king is not moving through a contested square. If all of the criteria are met, the king may move 2 squares toward the rook, and the rook is moved to the square on the opposite side of the king. All of this takes place in 1 turn. Another unique move is En Passant, translated as En Passant. When a pawn advances 2 squares past a pawn that would be able to capture the pawn if it had only moved 1 square, for the immediate turn afterward, that pawn may capture. In other words, when this pawn moves 2 squares past our pawn, we can capture it. Notice that if you make any other move, the moment has passed, and you can no longer capture the pawn. The last special move in chess is a pawn promotion. If a pawn from either side travels 6 ranks and reaches the last rank of the board, it is rewarded by being able to transform into any piece other than a king or a pawn. As I said before, the only way to win the game is via checkmate. Check occurs when one of your pieces is attacking the enemy king. In other words, the piece could capture the king on the next move. While in check, a player must do everything in their power to get out of checkmate. They can either capture the attacking piece, block the line between the king and the attacking piece, or move the king to a square that is not under attack. When a piece cannot be taken or blocked, and when the king has no squares to move to, the king is checkmated and the game is over. The game can also end one other way, in a draw. A draw can occur in two ways. The first way is that it is a player's turn to move, but he cannot make a legal move. If the king was in check, this would be a checkmate. But because the king is not in check, it is a draw, because there is no move that can be made. The other possible draw is if there is not enough material on the board to make a checkmate. For example, if white loses his rook, a king and a bishop cannot checkmate a king, so the game is drawn. So now that you guys know how to play chess, you can watch my other videos to learn how to crush your friends. Subscribe for more content like this, and let me know in the comments below what you would like to see. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.